The final chapter on JFK, Chapter 13, Segment 3, Lamb to Slaughter.
Welcome back. This is Segment 3, Lamb to Slaughter. I hope you like this segment card we picked out. My family didn't, but I thought it was very appropriate because this lamb is being sent to slaughter, going right down a chute, and that's exactly what happened to Lee Harvey Oswald. In Oswald's case, if you remember, when he was arrested at the movie theater, he had police completely surrounding him and protecting him so he wouldn't get shot, so somebody wouldn't assault or attack him. But yet, after he was charged with killing Kennedy, shooting John Conley, and of course, killing a police officer for the Dallas Police Department at that time, instead of surrounding Oswald and protecting Oswald, they handcuff him at both wrists, have no police protection in front, and they actually have policemen guarding and protecting walls in open spaces, and no one guarding Oswald from reporters and citizens who may be motivated to kill him. In the early morning hours of Sunday, November 24th, 1963, calls were being made to various police authorities warning that Lee Harvey Oswald was going to be killed during the transfer process. On early Sunday morning at about 2:10 a.m., the FBI's local Dallas office and the Dallas Sheriff's Department both received nearly identical telephone calls from someone. The caller warned that Oswald would be murdered during the transfer process and that he would be killed right in the basement. The Sheriff's Department agent who took the call believed that the voice sounded familiar. This information was relayed to both the Dallas Police Department and to Chief Jesse Curry, who advised that he was aware of it and that adequate protection of the prisoner would be made. Curry decided to ignore standard protocol of having the county sheriff's office handle the transfer. Rather, Curry took direct charge and decided that he would be in charge of the transfer and that he would use his own men. He ignored safety suggestions of his subordinates who requested that Oswald be transferred first at night and then in secret, and that a public decoy be used. And of all of these requests, Curry flatly refused to listen. Beginning on Sunday morning at or around 10 a.m., November 24th, 1963, that was the time that Curry had told reporters to appear so they could watch the transfer. But in spite of that, once it got past 10, 10:15, 10:20, 10:30, and thereon, the transfer was not occurring. Finally, a little after 11 a.m. on Sunday morning, Police Chief Curry ordered the transfer of Oswald, assuring his officers that everything was all set. However, the basement security was not all set, nor was the police transfer vehicle even in place when Curry gave the order to move Oswald. The only thing that was all set at that time was that Jack Ruby was in place in the police basement. And in an even stranger twist, Ruby was so well placed in the police basement that his personal lawyer was waiting in the basement and immediately available to offer him legal counsel after he shot Lee Harvey Oswald. Depicted on the green screen are several FBI models of the Dallas Police Department's basement where Oswald was to get into a vehicle for the transfer to the Dallas County Jail. Depicted in blue with white dots on them are Dallas police officers. As should be noted, there are 9 police officers standing in a line guarding nothing. And Oswald is depicted in the FBI diagram in yellow. It should be clear that there are at least 10 additional Dallas policemen standing behind Lee Harvey Oswald and the transferring detectives guarding walls. Nothing in front of them and a wall behind them. Only 2 police officers, pointed out with a blue arrow, guarded all of the reporters and newsmen and Jack Ruby in the basement. As we all now know, when Oswald took his walk toward the transfer car, with live television cameras rolling and photographers snapping pictures, Jack Ruby simply stepped forward and fired a single shot in the Lee Harvey Oswald stomach. As Ruby was wrestled to the ground, he cried out, "I had to do it because they, the police, weren't going to do it." After the shooting, Lee Harvey Oswald was whisked away into a waiting ambulance and taken to the very same hospital where Kennedy and John Connally had been taken, Parkland Memorial Hospital. There, Oswald was pronounced dead at 1:13 p.m. As Lee Harvey Oswald was lying in the trauma room dying, 2 things happened. 1, FBI agents from the Dallas office flooded Parkland Memorial Hospital and attempted to get a deathbed confession from Lee Harvey Oswald, with Oswald admitting he killed President Kennedy. The new president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, happened to be watching TV and placed a call to the emergency room at Parkland Memorial Hospital. And according to the doctor treating Lee Harvey Oswald, who was attempting to keep him alive, Johnson ordered the doctor to obtain a deathbed confession from Oswald. And when the doctor tried to explain to Johnson that it was not possible because of Oswald's condition, Johnson became adamant until the doctor finally advised him that Lee Harvey Oswald had passed away. Within minutes of Lee Harvey Oswald's death, Police Chief Jesse Curry and Dallas District Attorney Henry Wade called a press conference where both men announced that the case was now closed and that Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole assassin. Lee Harvey Oswald is finally dead. Lyndon Johnson, the new president, didn't get a confession, nor did J. Edgar Hoover, who sent FBI agents to the Parkland Hospital to get a confession either. But what we do have, and what I want to read to you, are sections from a multiple-page memo written by the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, 2 hours after Lee Harvey Oswald was killed. So this is from a memo written by Hoover on November 24th, 1963, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, marked secret and kept secret for more than 30 years. Let me start with this section from Hoover's memo, and I'll step back and maybe we can read it together. Hoover states that Oswald had been saying that he wanted John Apt as his lawyer, and Apt, with only the kind of evidence that they had in the case against Oswald, quote, could have turned the case around, I'm afraid. Meaning that Hoover knew that they did not have a pot to pee in to convict Lee Harvey Oswald with the evidence that they had secured. Let's look at another part of Hoover's memo. He states in the last sentence, there are bound to be some elements of our society who will holler their heads off that his civil rights were violated, and they were. Let's look at another section which is even more interesting on Hoover's memo. In this paragraph, J. Edgar Hoover is talking about his problems dealing with the Dallas Chief of Police, Jesse Curry, and Captain William Fritz. When we get down to the bottom portion, let me step away. Hoover states, since we now think it involves the criminal code on a conspiracy charge under section 241, we want them to shut up. A federal conspiracy charge mentioned by the FBI director 2 hours after Oswald's dead. But yet, everyone wanted to charge Lee Harvey Oswald with the crime of being one person killing the president. No conspiracy at all. This, of course, if it had been disclosed to Bobby Kennedy, the Attorney General, would have turned this case from a state charge to a federal charge and would have put this case into his yard. And Bobby Kennedy would have been able to handle it, examine it, evaluate it, and prosecute those involved with Hoover's evaluation of criminal conspiracy charge of the killing of John F. Kennedy. Let's look at one more part from J. Edgar Hoover's memo. Hoover's statements in this paragraph show exactly what was occurring with the FBI, the new President Lyndon Johnson, and ultimately the Warren Commission in handling this entire matter of Kennedy's death. And now in this section, he states, quote, "The thing I am concerned about, and so is Mr. Katzenbach, is having something issued so we can convince the public that Oswald is the real assassin." With that said, see you in the next segment.